Hello, I am acting teacher Michael Bean, and this is your free lesson from myfreeactingclass.com for today, Monday, January the 17th. This happens every Monday from 5 to 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. You can find more about us at myfreeactingclass.com. You can also email us your self-tapes there. Today, we're going to look at a self-tape and we're going to look at the script that came before it. I want to talk a little bit about that whole process of taking a script through to the finished product from the paper. And I think that it's been a while since I used that as an example. And thankfully, a longtime student sent in a self-tape and included the script that she was sent by her agent or representatives. And so we'll be able to use that as an example today and go through that. Also have some excellent questions from the folks who are attending the lesson. There's the advantage of coming live in person is you get to ask questions. So uh, let's start by just quickly looking at the website, which I like to do each time. Uh, if you go to myfreeactingclass.com, this is what you will find. Click here for today's lesson. Here's the link. And right down here, you'll find the email to send us things. So sign up for our newsletter to get the Zoom link for class. Send us your self-tapes to info@myfreeactingclass.com. Now, if you're not familiar with self-tapes yet, then this is the new way that professional film and TV auditions are happening almost exclusively. There was some discussion, and if you go back even to the videos at the beginning of 2021, there was some discussion about will in-person auditions sort of start to take over again once the pandemic eases up, and it looks like self-tape auditions or actors recording their auditions at home is basically here to stay. It is in many ways more convenient for casting directors, and they seem to be able to see more actors and sort of scan through them quicker. And so I have also spoken to at least two, or I've spoken to two casting directors in person, and heard anecdotally from other casting directors that the quality of self-tapes in general is very, very similar to the quality of their tapes in person. And so that just means that actors taping their auditions at home is here to stay. Now, one of the things that I was telling Duke is that, or that we were talking about before the lesson, that you don't need a lot of fancy technology. Currently, I am in a spare room at my mom's place, sitting on a bed with my laptop propped on a chair and a little ring light beside it. Basically, if I've got a camera, whether it's a phone, a laptop, and anything that's got a camera on it, if I've got a light source of some kind that I can shine in my eyes, and I have this just little space of blank wall that I can put behind me, then I can get a professional quality setup pretty much anywhere. So this is a real asset, and I highly recommend that you do a little bit of experimenting with lighting. If you're recording with a phone, my advice is to get a separate like tripod of some kind. And again, it doesn't have to be expensive. Even some selfie sticks have like little flimsy tripods that are part of them. It doesn't have to be fancy, it doesn't have to be sturdy. It's just something that you can put your camera on to approximately eye level, some kind of light you can shine on yourself so there's a light reflected in your eyes. And like doing this demo, this is so that uh, eye line, or the is where your eyes are looking. Right now, mine are right at you at home. So because I am talking to you, but for film and TV audition, you'd be just one side of the camera or just the other side of the camera. Eye light is the light reflecting your eyes. And if I turn that off, you can, oh, there's still a little bit from the screen, I think is probably where that reflection is from. So you can see that if I take that mostly out, uh, if I'm doing the acting here, I will seem less alive. I will seem less interesting, even though the content of what I'm doing has remained fundamentally unchanged. A lot of what makes something look and seem like very exciting, charismatic, engaging when you're in this little box has to do with technique. And that technical setup The first time you do it, it'll be kind of a pain. The second time you do it, it'll be kind of a pain. By the time you're, on your like 10th or 15th or 20th time, you can have it down to, 2 to 5 minutes tops. Like it is not complicated. So frame is what the camera sees. And so right now we're in a medium close up. That is the framing from the top of my head down to just below my armpits. Personally, I think maybe because I'm bald, I don't mind cutting off just the very top of my head. But usually we'll do that. What I see often from actors, particularly when they're self-taping, is this extra space over the head. And I think it's just some kind of um, intuitive thing. People are like, oh, I need to put myself right in the center. We really don't need the space over your head. So make sure you don't give yourself too much headroom when you're setting up at home, and always horizontal. If you're recording on a phone, don't ever record vertical, always record horizontal. And I could show you some of the things that come from casting directors that give you sort of quick instructions, and you'll see that they always include, never shoot in vertical, always shoot in horizontal. For audio, right now, I don't have a microphone or anything fancy attached to my computer. You don't need anything fancy attached to your phone. What you can record with, you're probably with just the microphone that is on your phone. If you're doing that, just make sure that you are a lot closer to that microphone than whoever's reading with you. Right, so when I'm recording, I often am using a virtual reader. I'm using a real person, but they'll be on a computer. Basically, I'll record on my phone, and then I will set up my laptop at the same eye level as the phone, just balanced precariously on a stack of storage boxes. But I will put it further back, and I'll turn the volume down a little bit. If you're reading with a real human being and you have the opportunity to do that, great. I think that most actors, the subjective experience for actors looking at and talking to a real person um, is or can be better for many actors. Certainly, I have actors say like, "Oh, that's what I miss. That's what I crave." For me in acting, you're watching the work. I don't see a lot of difference in the quality of the work as it shows up on camera, but the subjective experience for people talking to a real person, definitely some people strongly, strongly prefer it. And if that's what you're doing, just make sure that they are further away from the recording device than you are. Right. So if I've got my phone at about arm's length, which is what I usually need to do to get this kind of framing, then the person who is talking to me, I'm going to put them like 2 meters, 3 meters away, so that they are twice as far away from the recording device as I am, and that's just a real simple way to make sure that you end up louder and clearer than the person who's reading with you. Nothing worse than sending in a self tape where uh, the reader in some way sounds more interesting than you do, or is drawing focus because of their voice or how loud they are, or what they're trying to do with the lines. And one of the things that I will often ask readers, like if I have a friend who's visiting me who's not an actor, um, but I want to recruit them to read, I'll just say, okay, great, do less, like just say all these words like they're facts. And I reviewed this a little bit last week, but I think that it is worth coming back to and back to and back to, which is that being completely believable in film and TV, that is the price of entry. That is what you need to be able to do with your work. Just talk like you're a real person, and this is exactly what you wanted to say. And of course, as artists, we're going to get excited about painting with bright colors. We're going to get excited about like, I'm going to convey this experience. I'm going to convey this feeling. I'm going to explore this part of myself. I'm going to explore this part of the story. I get excited about those things too. In the world of film and TV, first you have to have a very solid foundation of, I'm going to say these words and people are just going to believe this exactly what I had to say. And then all of that stuff gets painted on top. But that foundation of just facts, honestly, you can do even with a civilian, with a non-artist, somebody who has no experience. If you say, okay, great, just say it like these are just facts. It's the happiest day of my life. It's the saddest day of my life. I feel great. I feel bad. The you know trolls are coming and we're all going to die, like whatever it is in the script, just ignore the exclamation points, ignore all the capital letters, the and just say it like it's facts. And if you get somebody else to read with you like that, it's not flat, it's not robotic, it's not boring, it's just factual, then likely you'll be able to give a solid read. And even if they are a complete non-actor and you can get them to read with you like that, then you get something that you can react off of, and they're not going to draw focus from you. So I have a script for us to look at today. And before I get into that, and this is a little bit of an extension from what I was talking about, definitely the last week before our holiday break. At that time, I was talking about how you can interact with your agent if you have an agent, or how you can get an agent if you don't have an agent. And one of the questions that I solicited from folks before the lesson started was essentially, I'm not getting as many auditions as I would like. I used to get more auditions. Now I'm not getting as many. Is there anything else that I can do to help myself get more professional auditions? And then with the kinds of independent auditions, film school auditions that I am seeking out for myself, what can I do? And I was asked to review some of that. So I will just quickly review that and then we'll go into the script. So in terms of, maybe I'll start with independent and film school auditions, because that's relevant to absolutely everybody. In Vancouver, I know which websites to send you to. Elsewhere, you're just going to have to do a little bit of creative Googling. It is not difficult. And really, if you're stuck, you can always ask folks who are involved in the film school programs to you locally, right? Because they will know. Like independent filmmakers and folks who are currently in film school for making films, they're the ones who will know where to post, because they're the ones who have the most reason to go looking for actors. Now, in the city of Vancouver and environs, you would go to vancouveractorsguide.com. That's the uh, best, most used, and most regularly updated place where student filmmakers, independent filmmakers go to post for actors. Those kinds of auditions, you don't have to, if you have a talent agent, you don't have to ask your agent about. You do have to tell them if you book something, because your availability is really important. But the telling your agent about that has two purposes. One, it tells your agent, I am being proactive and going out and seeking things out for myself. The other thing is, it is just keeping them up to date on what your commitments are, so that they know, what you've said yes to out in the world. But you don't have to check with your agent, and you do not need a talent agent to go looking for those. Why? Because there's no money in them, or very little money in them. And agents are professional business people whose only job it is to try and get work for their actors so that they can eat and make money and make 15% of whatever you make. So the reason you don't have to ask them is because they don't want to spend their time helping you get work that is, you may or may not be of questionable quality, and certainly will pay you either very little or nothing. Those The reason you would do those projects is, there are lots of reasons you would do those projects. One of which is just to be an actor. Obviously, we're in this because we enjoy the doing of the acting. So that's one of the primary reasons why you would do independent projects and film school projects, to get on-set experience, so that when you get onto a professional film set, you're like, excuse me for a moment. So that when you get onto a professional film set, you're like, yes, I know what I'm doing. I have spent hours in front of the camera, and those projects are a fantastic opportunity to try on that role of being in front of the camera and ask all of your questions. Oh, sorry, should have set myself up with a glass of water nearby. I'm going to stop the recording for 1 second and just go take care of myself, so you don't need to listen to me struggle. I'll be back in 1 second. So that's one of the reasons you would do those. The other reason is to build your film and TV resume, because, and this I think speaks to your question, Duke, about what can I do to help myself get professional auditions. One of the things is resume building. That it is possible, at least, that uh, folks who are looking at your resume and trying to decide whether or not to bring you in for an audition, if you are continuing to build that resume, that may make them more likely to see you. Now, in terms of those auditions, really all you need is, if you don't have an agent, all you really need is a headshot. And if you don't have a professional headshot for independent productions and student productions, you can just have a 8 by 10 of you on a good day, right? So again, clean background, nothing that might distract from your fabulous eyeballs. Good lighting makes all the difference. Lighting, super key if you're doing anything on camera, and that's still photography or film and TV. Lighting, right? Clean background lighting, like you on a good day. And then resume. And there are, if you go into the video archive on myfreeactingclass.com, there's an entire episode, and I think actually several of them on resume and headshot and details. So the do hopefully that answers your questions about independent student film. And is there anything I can do to help me get professional auditions was the other piece of that question. So resume building, it's possible. Making sure that you have a headshot, that is current, that looks like you, and that like looks professional. Especially now when casting directors are scanning through hundreds of pictures that are truly like the size of their thumbnail. So they're scanning through hundreds of submissions from talent agents of actors who are represented. They're choosing, maybe 50 people to see. And at least in my experience talking to actual casting directors about how they do that, like let's say a casting director gets 400, 500 submissions from talent agents. And if you don't understand how that process works, anybody else who's watching, again, I'd highly recommend going back into the archives and watching some of the interviews with actual casting directors, and I talk a little bit about that process. And if you haven't done this yet, scan all the way back to the very beginning of the YouTube channel, which there's a link to on myfreeactingclass.com. You'll find a 10-part series with a casting director named Stuart Akins. If you haven't watched that yet, highly recommend it. Now, this is from years and years ago, back when Stuart was coming in and working with my classes every summer, like every week. And after doing this 8, 9 times, I was like, hey, Stuart, can I just tape this whole thing? And it was so good. It was maybe like an hour and 15 minutes or something that I chopped it up into 10 pieces and uploaded it to YouTube. So it's one of the things on the channel that has gotten the most views because it's been around so long. But if you haven't watched it yet, I highly recommend you go back and watch that. This process is happening all online these days. What casting directors will say is they'll go through these probably like 50 at a time on a screen, and they'll scan through, and some actors obviously they'll know, so they're like, okay, they're going to see 50 actors for somebody who is in my age category, like, which is what, maybe like 40 to 60, and they're like, and initially they're going to have a sense of what they want. They're going to scan through and they're going to pick that first group of folks that they already know. They're like, yep, great, Michael Biehn, he's auditioned for me before. I know this is kind of the vibe he gives off, and this is what he looks like, and I know that he looks like his headshots, and I know that when I ask for a self tape, here's the kind of thing that I get. And so they go through and they pick those people. Then the second round, so let's say they've got 50 people, and they'll go through and they'll pick arbitrarily however many folks of different looks and slightly different ages and kind of different energies that they know. And then for any of those spots left over, that's when they start looking at, okay, now I'm going to start looking at headshots. Now I'm going to start looking at, oh, well, who is this Duke person? Like, do I remember seeing this person before? Like, not really. So, but his headshot's really interesting. I don't have anybody who looks like this coming in and auditioning for me for this role. And so they're choosing just from that little thumbnail. So having a little thumbnail that accurately reflects you, where when they get your video, they're like, yes, that's definitely the person I was expecting from the photograph. Very, very helpful. Also having a professional quality photo, because a so-so photo is going to end up with a so-so thumbnail. And if you can imagine somebody scrolling through hundreds and hundreds of those, the ones that are going to pop are the really professional, clear, clean ones. So if you're like, yeah, didn't see the point in spending like money on a professional headshot, and I just got kind of a friend to do something that looks kind of like a professional headshot. If you're one of those actors, and I'm Duke, I'm sure you're not in that category, but the justice is say like it's super annoying. Like, what an annoying, ridiculous thing to spend lots of money on. But this is why it is relevant. Is that it is sort of the marketing tool that actors actually can put time and energy into, and something that's very relevant to them. Now, what if you're like, well, Michael Bean, I've got good headshots and I'm actively building my resume and I've been doing that for a long time. Is there anything else that I can do? And this is where it gets really tricky, uh, because, in my opinion, the best thing that you can do is to continually work on your acting skills so that when you do get a shot, the quality of the tape that you send is very high. Not in just in the technical sense, but in terms of your acting skills. That's really the best thing you can do. It's just that that's not a marketing thing. That is just like a being an artist thing. This comes back to something that Larry Moss, I heard him say 15 years ago, that I found profoundly impactful at the time. He was talking about just how shallow the film industry is and how it tends to sort of eat people alive in various ways. And his basic advice was just be so good they can't afford not to hire you. And I quite liked that, just as like a top level drive. It's like, okay, good. Like the one thing that casting always needs, that directors always need, that producers always need, is highly skilled actors, and that is something that you genuinely have control over. You know, um, in my experience as a teacher, the thing that will keep you in that practice is finding something that feeds your delight on it, but it also truly is just about practice. There is something about, in my experience, and this is not, I'm not saying for all actors, I'm not saying that you have to like be in class or be practicing, but I think that if somebody feels like, yep, I'm doing this all the time, and so I deserve this. If there's a little bit of sense of a healthy entitlement that is also matched with skill, that those are strongly influential, right? If somebody's like, oh, I've got a big audition. Whoa. Oh, I got to dust off my skills because it's been weeks or months since I did something. That energy comes through in the tape a little bit. Whereas if somebody's like, oh yeah, I'm already putting in, however many hours in a professional class every week, and then hours and hours of practice every week, and then the other things that I'm doing for my own practice every week, so that when an audition comes through, it's like, oh yeah, great. Like I'm already in this all the time, and this makes sense to me, and I kind of, and I kind of deserve it, because I've been putting in the work. So yeah, let me show you what I've got, because I'm working on it all the time anyway. Like, great, give me a shot. Like, here's what I've got. That's one of the things that I think we can do for ourselves as actors, is to work on that sense of healthy entitlement, not by being a jerk, but by putting in the work, or if you're already putting in the work and like discounting it, you're like, yeah, 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 but it doesn't matter, to like really anchor yourself in some way in, oh no, wait, I am an artist. I'm putting in the time. This is what I've got. So the work itself is very high quality. Now, let's say you are already doing all those things. You're like, I'm in a weekly class, I'm showing up for Michael Bean's free acting class when I can. On top of that, I am like doing monologues, I'm practicing my voice work, I'm in some kind of physical practice like dance or martial arts, or right. So I'm doing all of the things that are involved with becoming a more skilled performer in my voice and body and emotional life. Uh, if you were sort of already doing all those things and you're still not getting the auditions, which absolutely can happen, right? And you're like, and you don't want to just keep working on being awesome and trust that when you do get a shot, you're going to be able to show yourself off. You know, the other thing is that you can periodically send little clips of yourself being awesome to your agent, not to casting directors. Even if you had their direct emails, that I think that would be a bad idea, right? They're seeing so many hundreds of actors every week that if they haven't requested you, in my advice is don't send them anything. You will be able to go out there on the internet and find stories of actors who are like, I broke that rule and I sent casting directors my thing and I had this huge success. Great. Like, of course, if you happen to be exactly what a casting director is looking for and you cross their desk at exactly the right time, yes, that is going to go well for you. Most of the time, and especially if you're in a smaller market like Vancouver, they're just going to be annoyed. And the risk about them being annoyed is, at least in Vancouver, they'll remember you. In Los Angeles, it's so huge, maybe they will just never remember you and you'll go in the slush pile with everybody else. But in Vancouver, riskier, because the smaller market and those 8 to 10 casting directors might remember your face again, if you sort of forced your way in front of them. But what you can do is you can send your agent clips. Hey, here's me like doing that cool skill that I told you about. Like, hey, remember how I said I can juggle 5 balls? Like, here's me juggling 5 balls, or doing the ski jump, or like on the trampoline, doing tricks, or like whatever it is, me with my dog, that does backflips, or like whatever it is that is there on your resume anyway. You can send them little bits of that. And you could also send them little bits of you acting. Now, I wouldn't recommend sending them like, here's 10 minutes of me doing in a giant soliloquy from King Lear, because the risk is they'll watch 30 seconds of it. And if it's not 30 seconds that it really grabs them or shows you off well, then that actually hurts you. So remember that the agent relationship is a marketing relationship. And so my advice is that you send them like a select 30 seconds to a minute that is in line with how you most want to be represented in the things that you feel represent your best work. With the goal of like, this is a marketing professional and I'm helping equip them to say, hell yes, this actor you should see them for this, even if you haven't selected them initially. So that is a possible thing to do. And so that's one of the things you can do. And then if you let's say that you've done all of those things, you're working on being a highly skilled actor, you're putting in all the practice, then and only then, if you wanted to take casting director workshops, that's when I think that might be a good investment. And even then, it's only a maybe, right? I have a really regular student of mine who is passionate about casting director workshops, and she's had incredibly positive responses from casting directors in workshops where they're like, wow, like, you're amazing, I'm going to bring you in right away. Has it turned into bookings for her like within a year of having that experience? No. Like, I definitely know actors who have sort of been brought in right away and that's turned into a booking for them. But I would say that the actors I know who've told me about that experience were already highly marketable in some way. And I think that casting director workshops are a way of like paying money to be seen by a casting director. Maybe they're a way to like practice sort of being adrenalized and performing for a casting director. In general, the only folks that a casting director are going to remember from that workshop are the folks who are exceptional, are the ones who absolutely stand out as being substantially more skilled than the average. And so if you're like, yeah, I'm pretty good, probably then probably it's a waste of your money to take a casting director workshop. No offense to the folks who are doing it, right? Unless you know, unless the money is not an issue for you, in which case it's sure not going to hurt you. Then you get to hear a real casting director say the things that acting teachers are saying, and maybe you trust them more. Maybe you're like, oh, Michael Biehn, I was worried he didn't know what he was talking about, but then I heard a real casting director say the same things, which instantly you could go into the video archive at myfreeactingclass.com and watch like 9 different casting directors or something. I think we interviewed 7 of them, in between 2020 and 2021, and then you wouldn't have to pay that money. But that's just me. I'm an intensely frugal person, and you do whatever you want to with your money. In terms of will it help you as a marketing tool, only if they experience you as exceptional, or they experience you as exactly what they're looking for. And barring that, probably not. That's my opinion. So if there are, if there are other questions, then please throw them at me, because I really think this is an ongoing question for actors always. They're like, how can I get more auditions? Is something that uh, that I think is on the mind of film and TV actors a lot, except for the very small fraction of people who are like my friend Reka, for instance, who for a while was having to record like 4 auditions a day. And she was like, I'm exhausted and burnt out. How do I like choose between these auditions, or like how do I manage, the like sheer number of auditions I'm being asked to do? You know, it's I think it's really interesting to me that um, I now have had the experience of talking to a few peers who are on the other side of that, right? Who are like, I'm getting too many auditions. And then that becomes a problem. So it's like, great, you just can't win. Right? Like no matter what happens, like we're human and we're either going to be like, it's too much, or we're going to be like, it's not enough. And so what can we do as artists? Maybe we can just accept the fact we're not going to be satisfied no matter what happens. And we can like follow the thing that lights us up to the very best of our ability. Right? The insane thing about being a film and TV actor is that you can be highly, highly, highly skilled and not work for years, for a decade, and then right, or you can have very little skill, but look like or be sort of in some way just like exactly what they're looking for, and work the first 6 times you go on audition. And if you're that actor, in either case, you're going to want to make a story about it. Right? If you're the actor who is highly skilled, you graduated from a multi-year program, you put tons of your life, energy, and time and money into becoming a more skilled actor, and and you're still not working, then you're going to want to have a story about that. You're going to basically want to make that your responsibility. You're like, there must be something I'm not doing, and that's not necessarily the case. Like it could be that every time you were in consideration, they just needed somebody else with like a different eyebrows, or a different skin tone, or a different height, or that like for whatever reason your nose is not fashionable this decade. Like there literally is not a way for you to control for those things. If, however, you are the actor who goes out on your first 6 auditions, books all 6 of them, that's when you are the most likely to go on YouTube and say, here's how it works. I've got the system. You want to work all the time? Here's what you do. Because that's what we do as humans. We make a story that we are responsible for whatever happens to us, because randomness is hard. Yeah. Right. And if you're an actor, what's going to keep you in the game if you don't work for 10 years? I'm not saying it'll happen, especially in a market like Vancouver. Honestly, if you are doing skilled work, if you're putting in the time, you're gonna have opportunities, right? Like you just are. There just aren't enough people who look exactly like you, and there still are, especially in right now. But even without a global pandemic, it's so much less expensive for them to hire you than hire somebody from another city or another country. There aren't as many people who look like you. You're gonna have opportunities to audition. If you are ready to go and full of that sense of healthy entitlement, where you're like, yep, I've been doing the work, put me in, coach, I'm ready. And I know my work and I've been putting in the time, and like, yes, I'm hungry, here's my shot. Okay, then I think that equips you the best. Could you do all of that, have great headshots, take great classes, still not work? Yep. No, plenty of actors who are there. Even actors who've like had a really substantial resume, and then they go through 2, 3, 5 years of not working at all. But the actors who I know who are still in the game kept doing theater during that time. You kept consulting, kept teaching, kept, like stayed engaged, and then eventually opportunities showed up for them again. Like that's a piece that you don't have control over. And my hope is that just getting that piece of validation and showing up and being able to say like, ah, and have other actors say, yeah, I get it, ah, doesn't make the the dissatisfaction go away, but at least normalizes it. And yeah, I could say more about, like the different opportunities, but I think top level, if you can find something that keeps acting and keeps the art alive and interesting for you, that's what's going to equip you the best long term. Anybody got a question you want to throw into the chat window before I move on to talking about a specific scene? Yeah, Christina, hit me.
So what happened? This is not my question. I just remember my friend asked me this a while back. She also wants to get into acting, but like on Monday she can't. She wants to attend this class, but then she can't really because she has sports on Mondays. But she just started it, so she wants to know, how do you get an agent?
Of course. And so I would recommend that your friend look at the last video that I did before the holiday break, where I talked for like 45 minutes about that. And there's a link in there to a PDF called How to Get a Talent Agent, that's like 15 pages long and goes through resume formatting. Because if I talked about those things now, it would take me off on like a 40-minute tangent, but that's where she would go to find the information. In fact, if you just go to the YouTube channel and just scroll back just a couple of videos, you'll find one that says How to Get a Talent Agent in big letters. So, just and if I was really tech savvy, this is where I would have that like pop up on the screen and people would be able to click on it, but I'm not that tech savvy yet. Or maybe I just don't care enough to be that tech savvy yet. But eventually, maybe I'll have an assistant who can do those things for me. So that's where you would go for that information. Now, before well, we still got a little bit of time left. Let me quickly show you the script and the audition that Dia sent us this week. So Dia is a longtime attendee of the free acting class, and she has been very generous about sharing her self-tapes with us. She's an actress who's normally based out of New York City and is multilingual. And the last time that she showed up for a lesson, shared some success with us that she just worked a couple of episodes on the TV series in the last few months, and we're all like celebrating for her. And so here's an audition piece that she didn't share with me sort of what the context was for her being sent this, but here is the script. So the project is called Gorgeous Morons. We look at this interior fashionable boutique day, trendy uber chic clothing store. Now, if I am an actor and I don't know what uber chic means, like enter it into Google. It only takes 5 seconds. Anything else, if you don't understand a word, that's here in the stage direction, it's possible that will throw you way off the story. Last time I went through the way that I'm currently for my own auditions, but also as a teacher, thinking about script analysis, which is just to simplify as much as possible and go, okay, what's the story? What's the style? What are the relationships? What are the changes? And what are the wants? Like, what does your character want? In the past, I've done like who, what, when, where, why. Making it simple, I think just gives you a skeleton that you can hang all of your many good questions on. Jane walks in from the sidewalk and approaches the sexy female clerk. Hi, how can I help you? Hi, I noticed your window displays the quote, well, women seldom make history, and you attribute it to Marilyn Monroe. In fact, it was actually coined by historian Laurel Fletcher Ulrich. Really? Yes, fascinating story. She's writing an essay about ministerial literature in the Puritan era, and you just walked away, right? This is really normal in comedy in particular. And so to me, like right away, it's like, okay, we've got a hi, we've got an and, right? So we've got some of these little clues in the script that tell us that the style is comedy. So if we're going to read the whole thing, it's right. She continues to try and get the clerk's attention. She does some hyperbolizing about Laurel Thatcher Ulrich, super famous. She can't even walk down the street without being mobbed in college towns by feminist academics. Hyperbole, period, qualifier. then. When you see something like this, it doesn't get read out loud. So if we were to read the story, you would see that it is a woman who's walked into this boutique clothing store, to sort of try and make a point. And she spends 2.5 pages trying to convince the clerk, that like it is urgently necessary right now, to change this sign that's got a misattribution. That it's not Marilyn Monroe who's said this quote; it's somebody else. Style comedy, the story, we've got a number of different ways to look at that story, but we've got like the moment before, if you're playing I believe the lady's name is Jane, the woman who's walked in. You can see the other woman is just labeled as clerk. Now typically that means that if that clerk only appears for this one scene, right? If clerk was an ongoing character, then they might say clerk the first 2 lines, and then in the stage direction it would say Marianne, blah 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 blah, and then it would appear as Marianne from then onwards, because initially they would label it the same way the audience sees it, which is like clerk with no name, and then when her name showed up, it would give her a name. The fact that over the course of 2.5 pages it doesn't show her name means that that's the only time in the script that she shows up. So she's only clerk. If you're playing clerk, you can give yourself a name. In fact, it's a good idea to do it before they go to set, because otherwise, if they ask you to ad lib, or if somebody is like, "What's your name?" and you've got to go, Thaddeus. I mean, Tom. Oh God. Some people are great at improvising on the spot, but there's fundamentally no necessity for it if you're working even on an independent project or a film school project. A lot of the time, you just have to fill in the missing pieces for yourself, right? If you're a clerk. So, but if you're Jane, then your story is my moment before. Okay, I've seen this in the window. This is really important. I'm going to go in and make this point. Part of your story is like deciding who Jane is. Okay, she's like this and like this. I'm like this. I'm passionate. I'm a feminist. I'm an academic. I care about these things a lot. I want to connect with people. I'm gregarious. I'm outgoing. Whatever that is, you write that character description for yourself. I've done this exercise here in this class before, where it's just like a handful of adjectives. I'm just talking you through, if I'm playing Jane, this is some of what I'm thinking of, right? So that's story. Moment before, moment after, my character, the clerk's character, there's some clues in the script, obviously, but I'm also going to decide what the clerk is like, and I'm decide that the clerk is like, like fancy. She thinks she's better than me. In my head, I'm Michael Biehn. I'm like, oh, okay, so I know what that looks like. I know that I'm gonna put this kind of outfit on the clerk and this kind of makeup and this kind of attitude, because that's the thing that Michael Biehn is like. Oh, that person totally thinks they're better than me right now. Give me something to work against. Okay, so that's my story. Style, I'm in comedy. Relationships, strong feeling or opinion about myself, about the quote, a strong feeling or opinion about it, strong feeling or opinion about the clerk who's so fancy, strong feeling or opinion about the place. From there, I'm going to go into changes. Right? If I tell a story and it's, even if I have a strong feeling or opinion, if it's all the same, if I'm angry and angry and angry and angry and angry, you're going to lose me. And so what are the changes? Sometimes, or often, acting teachers will call this beats, but I like changes because it is plain language. It is useful to know for anybody who's not familiar that acting teachers in particular will often call those beats, and beats are just changes, usually accompanied by a small pause, new thought, new feeling, but story, style, relationships, changes, and then want. And if I'm playing Jane, I'm going to look for a want that's really alive for me. Again, acting teachers will often call it objective, but it's like, what do I want the clerk to do or feel? And in this case, I have a really clear, like, I want her to change the sign. But what do I need to get her to feel to change the sign? And that's going to be a Michael Biehn thing. Now, because I am an academic, and or at least I've got that flavor to me. Maybe I want to get her passionate about this feminist icon. Like, no, like there's this feminist icon that you don't know about. Like Marilyn Monroe, sure, she was great, but like, do you know about this amazing person? And I'm going to try and convince you, Christina, to feel the way I feel about this feminist icon. And then you're going to change your mind. And then you're going to do the thing I want you to do. Maybe that's how I do it because that's what appeals to me. But there's this beautiful amalgam when you are doing film and TV work, or when you're doing any acting work, between here's the story, here are the facts, here's the circumstances, and then here's what's alive for me that I can use to tell that story. And it have to include me, or it's just not going to be alive enough. Right? Remember, they've got hundreds of people to choose from. They're going to see 50 of these. If I choose something that's just facts, but right, that just gets you in the door. Everybody can do just facts. And people who can't do just facts, they're not going to watch past the first 15 seconds. If I don't choose something that's alive for me personally, yeah, what am I doing? I'm not telling a story as an artist. I'm also not having as much fun as I could be having. I'm not bringing myself in a way. I'm going to walk away from that audition going like, I did really competent work. And I've looked at a bunch of my own past self tapes and reviewed them and had that exact assessment. I'm like, oh, I did really competent work. I gave them what I thought they wanted in a way that I thought they wanted it. No wonder I didn't get a call back for that. That I didn't put myself in it. And does it mean that if I'd put myself in it, I would have gotten a call back? No, probably not. They're still seeing 50 people. They still probably want somebody taller or shorter with like less bushy eyebrows. It's like, who cares? But the point is that if I'd put myself in it, maybe I would have felt better as an artist about it. And I've been like, yeah, look at that. Like, I showed them me and I gave them my version of the story, and I feel good about that work. And that's the thing that's got to sustain me for 6 months or a year or 2 or 10. Right? Like, I've got to keep my own energy and enthusiasm in this, because if I do get my shot, but I get it 5 years from now, and by then I'm like cynical and bitter and resigned and depressed, and I'm like, sure, yeah, fine, I'll give you my shot, but like the last 100 times nothing's happened, so like it's probably a waste of my time too. Guess how likely that is to get me a role? Very, very, very unlikely. So and so that's that sort of simplified way of thinking about this right now. Story, style, the relationship, changes, and the want, like what the character wants. So let's watch Dia do it, and then I will see if some of I can give you some thoughts on her performance that sort of fall into those 5 categories to help you understand the way that I'm thinking about them. And also just so that you can end by watching somebody who's not just me talking for an entire hour.
Hi, how can I help you? Hi. I noticed your display had the quote, well-behaved women seldom make history, and you've attributed it to Marilyn Monroe. But in fact, it was actually coined by historian Laurel Thatcher Ulrich.
So technically what we've got is, right, no space above her head. She's in horizontal, great eye light, her voice a lot louder and more clear than the person she's talking to. She's got a nice neutral background, and she's in that medium close-up, top of her head to just below her armpits, and her eye line where she's looking is just to one side of the camera, so we're still seeing all of her eyeballs, and her head is not turned in profile so that her eyes are cut off in any way, even slightly. Just that quick, like, here's all the things that are going so right about that.
Yes, it's a fascinating story. She actually was writing an essay on minstrel literature during the Puritan era, I believe, and then you're looking away. You know, Laurel Thatcher Ulrich is an amazing woman.
Well, I haven't heard of that.
Trust me, she's super famous. She can't even walk down the street without getting mobbed. In College Towns by Feminist Academics.
Right, so that's the qualifier I was telling you about. It's like, oh, okay, this is so clearly comedy.
So, yeah. The quote in your display is misattributed, and you should change it.
Well, thank you so much for coming in and pointing it out.
That was sarcastic?
No.
That was sarcastic.
Yes.
People are never really as grateful as I think they'd be when I correct them. Look, I'll get out of your very shiny hair. Just promise me you'll change the display.
Fine, we'll change it.
Now that wasn't so hard, was it? Thank you. Thanks. You know, it's driving me crazy. How about you change it right now?
Are you serious?
I'm always serious. It's sort of my thing.
Are you going to buy anything?
God, definitely no.
Then you need to leave.
But well-behaved women seldom make history.
Okay, I'm calling security.
Okay. Have a nice day. Bye.
And so there you go. There's Dia's the self-tape, for that particular role. And just to give you the notes sort of in this frame of story, style, relationship, changes, want. Like, do we see Dia's personality in this? Totally. We have the there it's like friendly and like self-deprecating. There's like a little bit of deferential, playful, sweet. There's a lot of that coming through here, and so in that sense, so technically proficient, and is she showing off who she is? Certainly, from what I've seen of Dia, over the course of her tapes and then in lessons, I think that is reflective, and so I think that there's real utility to that, even if that's sort of not quite what they're looking for in the breakdown. If in the breakdown they were like strident and serious, well, then like since there's a lot of that you don't have control over, you read it for information, you're like, okay, I'm still got to bring me to this in some version. Story, there's a couple of things in here. She says that's kind of, I'm always serious, that's kind of my thing. Now the words say that. Did we see that reflected in Dia's performance? Not exactly. Like, we saw a lot of her personality, but we didn't. But we saw a lot of like, her, making light of it and joking about everything. And so there are some aspects to story, I think, that would be useful to look at and go, okay, well, the writer's given you that. Like, what can we make out of that? And can we do that without going off Dia's personality? Could we find those moments where she's like, okay, I'm joking, but like, actually this really matters to me? Would she have to be like a jerk about it? No, because I think that would take us into like non-Dia territory, which might be interesting for her to do as a stretch, but probably she wouldn't want to put out there in the world as a professional audition right now. So there's some story aspects to it, and Dia, if you watch this, then that's one thing that you could look at. Is like, oh right, then there's some style aspects to this. Currently, I would say the pacing on the scene is slow. If you're taking a pause, especially in comedy, I would say make sure that it is full of something in particular. And right now, there's a lot of, okay, so anyway, the in between things that I think that if you tighten it up, we get more of the laugh, right? I think that it's that tennis match thing of like, hit the ball, 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 hit the ball. And you certainly don't always have to do that. But in those moments where you're like, hit the ball, and then it's gonna, I'm going to take that pause on purpose, or I'm going to like fill it up with like, reaction, 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 saying my thing. That's another thing that you could play with there. Would it necessarily work everywhere that you tried it? No. Would it be worth exploring to bring in more of the comedic style? I think yes. Relationship definitely could come in and have a clearer opinion about the woman you're talking to right off the beginning. We've got this thing about like you and your very shiny hair. You heard her say that line, maybe like 2/3 of the way through. It's written in the script. does the woman who's like passionate about a feminist icon have a strong opinion about the woman with the very shiny hair right from the moment she starts talking to her? Might be helpful, to play with that and bring that in. Certainly going even further with the strong feeling or opinion about the feminist icon and about the wrong sign. Because what we've got written in the script is that she's so passionate about the wrong sign that she's like, okay, but now, can you change it right now? Like right now, while I'm watching now. And although Dia's performance stayed true to the script, I didn't feel the urgency to it. And I would have loved to like find more of that relationship that might drive the urgency. Yeah, and I think that might give us more of the change, right? If she came in not knowing she was going to get so much resistance, or expecting she'd be able to bull her way through it or charm her way through it. She's like, I'm so charming. And maybe that fits like who we've got as Dia as a personality, right? So she comes in, she's like, I'm so charming. I'm going to be able to make this work. It's not working. Oh God. Okay, it's not working. Then maybe that would give us more arc to that scene. And then in terms of like helping her find those stakes and drive it from the inside, that's where we would get creative about like what is that she wants the other person to do or feel. Right. So that's this, again, this frame that I've been playing with lately to make it super simple of story, style, relationship, change, and want. And so, Dia, hopefully that's helpful for you watching. I will also say that at least one of Dia's tapes where I've done this before and gone through and like, here's 11 things that you could try differently. She got back to me and was like, yeah, so I booked that one. So this is not to say that audition tapes need to be perfect. It is more that my expectation when somebody sends me a tape is that they're looking for advice on what are the things that are showing up that I could try, that maybe I haven't thought to try, or are there things that I could play with that might take this thing that is skilled and make it a little bit better. And incidentally, if you ever send me a self-tape and you're like, please be gentle with me, I will be so much more gentle. And I've had actors send me tapes before and they're like, let me have it. Like, I want the full casting director version. Okay, and I've done some of those too in these lessons. But otherwise, I'm just going to stay curious. I'm going to point out some things that I think might be worth exploring in terms of bringing more depth to the performance. So there we go. That's today's lesson. Any last questions or comments before we wrap up today? Okay. My name is Michael Bean. I'm a professional film and TV acting teacher, and this is your lesson from myfreeactingclass.com. Join us here every Monday from 5 to 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, or check out our website for our video archive. Bye, everyone.